Stacey Murphy here, and I've taught thousands of growers around the world just like you how to get the most out of their vegetable and herb gardens. That means more delicious, homegrown, inexpensive, organic food for you and your loved ones, contributing to your health and your well-being. And because you grew the food yourself, you can rest assured your food is free from pesticides, herbicides, and GMOs. You see, it's my passion to remove any obstacles so you can enjoy gardening, one of the most nourishing activities on the planet. But how much food can you really grow for yourself? That's why I took the 40-day challenge. I committed myself to creating a brand new garden and tracking my progress. And when I tallied up the results, I grew a shocking $420 worth of vegetables and herbs. Now, I've had some experience growing food, so that's a lot of groceries. I've also had students in my longer Grow Your Own Vegetables course who've grown hundreds of dollars of produce their first growing season with me, and students who thank me for their first successful vegetable garden bringing food to the table. Now, I'm sure you want to know the recipe for how I grew all this food so that you can do the same thing for yourself and your loved ones. So the first thing is to find 100 square feet or less, and that's about 10 square meters if you're on the metric system. So for me, what that looked like was 2 boxes, each 3 feet by 6 feet, and so notice here that that's only 36 square feet of planting space. And then I also had 2 shelves indoors with grow lamps, which I used to sprout, and I'll show you that later as well. So the first ingredient to this recipe, there's 5 ingredients. The first ingredient, 6 to 8 hours of sun each day, because healthy plants, they photosynthesize, that's how they grow. They can't grow without the sunlight. And so what you want to do is on a sunny day, you go outside and you look where you're going to grow, and each hour you check to see if you have sun, and then you tally up the number of hours that you have sun. Hopefully it's between 6 and 8 hours. I did this challenge with just 5 to 6 hours of sunlight in that back bed because it was winter and the sun was low in the sky, and it still worked. The second ingredient, your temperatures determine your crops. You don't want to fight nature. And so where I was growing, it was winter in a temperate climate, and the temperatures in the daytime sometimes were up to 70, but sometimes were only up to 55. So I didn't want to chance it. I stuck with some cooler weather crops. I grew radishes, turnips, beets, carrots, chard, kale, collards. I grew herbs. I grew cabbage. I grew some peas. And so that's where I stuck because my temperatures were what they were. Now what you want to do is check your daytime and nighttime temperatures. And so when I look at these temperatures in Brooklyn, and this was a weather report that I just looked at for this week, and so if I was growing in Brooklyn, it's getting close to the time where you can plant those warmer weather crops. I would say that those nighttime temperatures, if they raise just a couple of degrees, maybe to 50 at night consistently, then I would plant just about anything. But until then, I wouldn't plant just anything. I would stick to a little bit of the cooler weather crops. Okay, now the third ingredient, building soil for long-term success. So while I was doing a 40-day challenge, I'm not just concerned with my 40 days and getting the most out of the boxes for the 40 days. I want to ensure that after 40 days is up, that my boxes are still very fertile. So I was working to improve that soil as much as possible. And when I created a new bed, so the 2 beds that are shown here on the screen was the 2 beds that I used to create my 40-day challenge. But recently I created a new box. And so what did I do to build that box? Well, basically I used 3 untreated 2x12 boards, and so the sides were 6 feet long, the ends were 3 feet long. I did all the cuts at the store so that I just brought the wood home and put it together. And basically what I did is I screwed it together using deck screws. I happened to have a couple. I put 2 in each corner. They were 3.5 inches long, and that held the box together. I filled it with 12 cubic feet of garden soil, and it was basically 3 bags of this garden soil. And I picked a garden soil based on, it had topsoil in it, and it was amended with some good compost. The way that I chose it is that it had an OMRI listing, and I'll show you what that looked like in just a minute. So I picked a good quality soil for my beds, and then I used 4 cubic feet of homemade compost. And while I had this at home, you can purchase compost. And so when you go to look at compost, this is a compost that I like for my local conditions. It's got really great ingredients on it, and it's got an OMRI listing, which is basically an organic not-for-profit that looks at the ingredients, and it's just an assurance that the product is organic. So I like this particular compost for that reason, and I like the ingredients. I added 12 trowelfuls of worm poop because it adds a lot of beneficial bacteria to my soil. So that's something that I'm doing in my soils. I'm really promoting good soil biology. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow those soil microorganisms to bring nutrients to my crops. So very important to have good soil biology. So 12 trowels of worm poop. I added 12 tablespoons of rock dust, and this was to ensure that my crops had the full spectrum of macro, micro, and secondary nutrients. So this comes from volcanic rock. I like sometimes to find rock dust that has a mixture of lava rock as well as seafloor rock, and then it has a really full spectrum of nutrients in it. You don't need too much, a little goes a long way. This is extra, you don't have to do this. I happen to do it because I had it around, but you may not have it around. And then basically I took and I mixed it all together. I transplanted my crops, I direct seeded my crops, and then basically I watered everything in, and from there I kept taking care of the plants. All right, so that's the third ingredient, is making sure that your soil has long-term fertility. The fourth ingredient, you want to put the plants in your daily path. You're the fourth ingredient, actually. You have to be committed to this gardening habit. And so for me, I put the garden beds right outside in front of my desk so I could see them. I also have an outdoor table where I sit and eat lunch each day, and that garden table, I can view my garden beds from there as well, so they're right in my line of sight. And then indoor, I had an indoor setup with trays, and I had lights on my trays, but if you're just growing shoots, pea shoots and sunflower shoots, the light is not always necessary, but I had these set up because I was growing for future crops that I was going to grow, and so I put in a light for my shoots as well. And they were right next to my bed so that when I woke up in the morning, I could turn on the lights, and when I went to bed at night, I could turn off the lights, and at those two times, I could also spritz them with water. So that was my way to make my life really easy. So this fourth ingredient being me, make my life as easy as possible so I remember to go out and take care of the plants, or in this case, wake up and turn the lamps on. And for those of you curious, I tested two different types of lamps. I thought both of them worked great. They were 2 feet long, basically because I had a shelving unit that was short, but I could save a lot of money by purchasing a 4-foot shop lamp, a fluorescent shop lamp. That could have saved me quite a bit of money. It just didn't fit in my cabinet. Now, what I used for that mix when I was growing that food is I essentially used this potting soil, which normally I would use a seed starting soil, but I really enjoyed this particular potting soil because it was filled with peat moss and bark and all of the things that I would want in my seed starting mix, as well as some perlite and a lot of microbes and mycorrhizae. So I chose this particular potting mix, but it was mostly because it had all the ingredients that I liked, and it had that OMRI listing. Okay, so then the fifth ingredient that I used, of course, was vegetable and herbs need water, and the water is what moves nutrients through the plants. So I didn't put up a drip irrigation system. That would have cost some extra money. So what I did is I just hand watered each day, and it took me a couple minutes each morning, sometimes every other morning. There was a lot of rain in the winter, and so I didn't have to water every day. So that's what I was committed to, and here are the results. So in the first 40 days, I grew about $420 worth of groceries, vegetables, and herbs, and my investment was just $128 for all the supplies that I purchased. And so your investment will vary depending on where you are, of course, and where you're starting on the spectrum. Do you have boxes in place? Do you need to purchase all the ingredients? And what's available in your local area. So then the remainder means that if you take out that investment, that means that I netted $292 worth of groceries. So that's a pretty good deal. Here's the cool thing though, the next 40 days, I don't have as much investment. I just have some additional seed costs. And from there, if I was to grow the exact same thing, I could basically grow that exact same set of crops for $402. So that's pretty incredible. Those are great results. And whatever experience that you have, you may find that you get similar results. You may find that your first time around is a little bit more challenging, and then the second time you do this, you keep improving. So It really varies depending on your experience, but this is what's possible in 40 days. So people ask me, is it really possible to grow food for your family? Now, the next question people ask is about time investment. So I spent 40 days committed to growing, and I spent a couple hours that first week buying everything, all my supplies, and setting it up. And if I had those 2 beds to build, it probably would have taken me another 8 hours to set those up, from scratch. That's based on the time that I spent building that new box. And then each day I was spending about 1 minute when I woke up and 1 minute when I went to bed spritzing my indoor plants, my shoots. And then I spent about an hour each week harvesting, watering, and checking on the plants. So that's not a whole lot of maintenance time. The particular crops that I was growing don't need a lot of maintenance. You're basically waiting for them to come to ripeness. And so you can do this with a busy schedule. Just know that as you're getting started, that setup takes the most amount of time. So oftentimes people give up because it seems like so much work to set it up. But really, once you set it up, that's you're over the largest amount of the work. So now you have all the ingredients to doing your own 40-day challenge. That's my recipe. And if you want to do the 40-day garden challenge with me, I'm announcing all the details in the next video, and I'd love for you to join me. Please post your comments below. What kind of garden challenge are you going to commit to this year? And keep an eye on your inbox for all of the challenge details coming very soon.